Today's video is going to be rather somber, dealing with a very difficult topic at the moment. There has been, in the headlines, this terrible tragedy of Mr. Baxter and his murdering of his own family, his ex-wife and his 3 children, in a very horrific manner. And I don't think I need to go through the details of that, but I just want to talk about the climate at the moment and try to bring some clarity to what I see. There's a lot of narratives around how he was a monster and how he should burn in hell. And I think we get so emotionally charged over issues like this that it can be hard to sift through the reality of what is really going on in relationships and in families today. And of course, you might be wondering, what does this have to do with the wealth of nations? Well, as I've said before, a country is only, or a nation is only as wealthy as the strength of the individual families that make up that nation or that country. So this is a prime opportunity to discuss and to talk about this issue, and perhaps we can talk about some solutions. It was revealed that Mrs. Baxter left her husband a year prior to this happening, and it went downhill from there. So I don't want to point fingers about what happened, why it happened, etc., but just to discuss it and talk about it and put it in reference, because once again, I think this issue is being used as a way to target men as being unstable, etc., unfit. But as we will explore in this video, I hope to show that the reality is men and women do terrible things to their own children, to their own families. It happens quite often, and all too often, of course, but it happens. So let's have a look. I've given this example. This is the most recent one, Hannah Baxter and her family. But there's plenty more. For example, this was only in October 2019, last year. We have a mother who is accused of killing her daughters in the Madley home. Very serious issues. Very, very sad. But I suspect that it hasn't gotten near as much attention as this one has. Perhaps because of the nature of the way that it was done. I'm not sure. But once again, a sad story of a mother taking the lives of her own children. And not too long ago, we had this situation in 2017, when the Cairns mother was found to have murdered her own children, 8 of them. 8 of them. And there's a lot of outpouring in this one, a lot of grief, and it was quickly determined that this was an issue of mental health, and the courts have deemed her to be of an unsound mind when this happened due to an undiagnosed illness of schizophrenia. But once again, I didn't see the same response as we are seeing now in this situation with Mr. Baxter. Here's another example. This is a Port Denison family who, many years ago, in 2011, the mother took the life of her 2 children. Now, all these situations have something in common. Family breakdown, obviously. And it's quite sad to see. But this is the worst of it. When the children suffer. So this is an opinion poll, or an opinion piece from the ABC, which I find quite measured and reasonable, and talking about how terribly in which this situation has been reported on. It says here that the story became about the demon dad, the rugby star, and the picture-perfect family, due to many family photos that have been available. Social media, it's been all over social media as well, talking about how they had the picture-perfect family, which maybe from photos from years ago was the case, but it clearly was not. And I think it's unfortunate because as a society, we can't get too personal. We can't know all the details of what happened with this couple. But it leaves us wondering, I'm sure, about how things went from perfect happy family to what we have now. And there would have been so much that happened between now and then that if we were to understand fully what happened, we would need to know those things. But at the same time, there is respect for privacy between the people. Yeah. The Courier Mail editor said this, that they were so suburban, so normal, so Brisbane. That's clearly not the case. Family was not happy, period. And Rosie Batty, who lost her son, said, family violence happens to everybody no matter how nice your house is. It's also become of interest that he was an ex-NRL player. Now, this is a point that is made that is very, very good. The real story is hidden. Hannah's father described Rowan Baxter as a disgusting human being and a monster who should rot in hell. So there's a lot going on here, stuff that we'll never know. So I was surprised to see this as well. This is from 2019, February 8th. And this really put it into perspective for me, and I think it's important for everyone to take into consideration when we start considering one gender over another. Because I think it is assumed that men are doing these things at remarkable rates or all the time. But I think this article puts things into perspective, and I think it's a perspective that we should keep, a perspective that we often lose when we're talking about very difficult subjects like this. And I know the news doesn't help with that at all, but this says here, mothers murdering their children on the rise, while fathers are declining. I'm not sure why that is the case. And I'll read some of this here. At least one child in Australia is killed by a parent each fortnight, according to a report into Filicide released by the Australian Institute of Criminology this week. Filicide is a general term referring to the killing of a child by a parent or parent equivalent, which in Australia includes the custodial parent, non-custodial parents, and step-parents. The report shows that between 2000 and 2001 and 2011 and 2012, there were 238 recorded incidents of filicide in Australia, with 260 offenders involved in these incidents. Males constituted 52%, 124 of offenders, and females 48%, 114. So there's not much of a difference between males and females in relation to the murdering of their own children, or to filicide. We can see a graph here. We can see that the male rate is going down, thankfully. And the trend appears to be going down overall since 2000, which is good. So it's happening less and less, which adds weight to the argument that society in general is getting better and better. But I think that's a telling statistic that men and women are pretty much half and half in relation to the crimes committed against their own children. Now, these are a lot more statistics here. Why do they do it? So here's some motivations. There's acutely psychotic, those who are lost the plot, child maltreatment, altruistic filicide, the act being committed out of love or to spare the child of perceived suffering, unwanted child filicide, the child is no longer wanted, and the act is undertaken to achieve this. The motivation and action of offenders as a deliberate attempt to make their spouses suffer. So there's lots of things to consider here. It says here, however, within this, females were more likely to be responsible for neglect, whereas male offenders were responsible for physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. So that's another thing to consider in all this. Now, there is a radio program that I listened to earlier that was talking very much about this, some of the problems with the family courts, problems with domestic violence, and issues in relation to family breakdown. And it's something that we really have to talk about and really get a handle on, because I don't think we are headed in the right direction in terms of the stability of the family. So I'm going to play this, and hopefully you can hear from a man's side. This is the guy who lost his two children, his two daughters, his wife taking their lives. So I want you to listen to this, have a listen, and it'll be something to add to the discussion on family violence.
The Brekkie Show with Wolfie and Nadia
on ABC Radio Perth and WA.
Back in December 2011, the most horrible of tragedies unfolded in Port Denison, 360 kilometres north of Perth. Two young girls, 12-year-old Jane Cuzens and her 10-year-old sister Jessica, were killed at the hands of their mother, Heather Glendenning, who then took her own life. Now, this was a crime that rocked the close-knit seaside community, and it left many people asking why and how something like this could happen.
This crime followed a long and difficult battle in the family court between Heather and her ex-husband, Harley Cuzens. Harley says he had repeatedly warned the court that his former wife was mentally unwell and a danger to their daughters. Harley has not spoken publicly about this for 8 years, but now with talk of reforming the family court, he's decided to speak out. And Harley joins us from our Broome studio. Good morning to you.
Morning, Matt. Morning, Nadia.
Why have you decided to talk to us today, Harley?
Oh, it's just probably the timing's right. I've stayed very quiet about everything for a long time, and I've never, I've never spoken. I've never done an interview. I spoke to the Australian newspaper over the weekend, and then you guys this morning. And the timing's probably right for me. I can speak about it now. And it's probably right that someone who's been in the system with the worst possible outcome speaks about the system.
Can you give us an understanding of what you were trying to tell the family court?
Well, I was perfectly straight from start to finish. She had mental issues caused by what I thought was marijuana. Schizophrenia, everything that goes with it, bipolar, you name it. And I'm not qualified to say that. You just hear it. I listen to the radio and you hear things and you think, that's my partner, It got worse and worse. So in the end, we broke up, and that was my issue with the family court from start to finish. They weren't arguing with a rational person. She presented very well. She spoke very well. She did everything well, except she was so delusional. In the end, she'd start believing it, all the stuff she started speaking. But that was my thing with the court. I didn't move off my same track from start to finish. Except no one really listened to me. I was just a, bloke in the family court who I suppose everyone says their ex-partner's mad.
Were you telling the family court that you believed your children were in danger?
I definitely told them that. I said they are not, they're definitely, not. You have to be careful in the family court, which I learned from numerous lawyers, is not to actually front on it, have a attack at the other person, But I made my point very clear that I thought she was unstable to have the children. From day one, I thought the children should have been with me and she should have had limited supervised access. But from the day they left home, the first thing, they do is they They put they take everything they can. You're not home, so the house gets emptied. Then they put a restraining order on you, so you can't get anything back. So you've got none of your, you've got no paperwork, no checkbooks, everything's gone. Movers have come in and moved everything out. Then they whack a restraining order on you, so you can't get it back. So you're very much back-footed from the start. So then, the first thing that happens is that night the police will come and knock on your door and serve you with a restraining order. And you think, well, that's fine, I really don't want to see it tonight anyway. And you think, oh, well, I'll sort this out. You rock up to the local court a week later or this, that and the other, I can't remember the exact time. And you get hit with you go and find yourself a lawyer and you think, oh, well, dust is settled now. She's gone to her parents' place. The kids are fine. Yada, yada, yada. In due course, it'll sort out quite quickly. Well, how wrong was I? You get hit with an absolute barrage of this, that, and the other. Your lawyer looks at you like you're the worst person on earth. And that's where it all starts. You're back-footed right from the start. But that's the case that got me. A couple of weeks after that, you're off to the family court, so you've got 2 courts going. And the other person's been funded by legal aid and you're funding yourself. You think, I'm fighting 2 court battles now.
It seems the system really let you down. Is that how you feel about it?
The system really let me down. It absolutely let me down. And there was glimmers of hope. Like, I actually got custody of the children and the children resided with me for about 12 months or so. But then they go and get another court-appointed expert witness, and he made a ruling that I worked too hard, I was this, that and the other. I said, well, you have to go to work. Just because you've got kids, you still have to go to work. That's a fact of life. And but everything gets done, everything gets sorted. The kids go to school, they have lunch, dinner, tea, they do their homework, they do this, that and the other. But I was a working single parent. And anyway, in the court in their wisdom, they, and I obviously fought quite vigorously against it, took the children off me and put them back in their mother's custody.
And when you were warning of dangers and saying, I do fear for the life of my children, what sort of response would you get?
Oh, great assault, absolutely. You got, it backfired on you. Not just dismissed, it backfired. They'd think, you were the villain for even suggesting such things. It went against you, not at all for you.
After the murders of your 2 daughters, did anyone come to you and admit then that they'd failed in their duties?
Yes. The independent children's lawyer, she was devastated by it. And she was absolutely devastated. She apologised to me greatly. She said, we just got it wrong. We got you wrong from start to finish. But the whole way down the line, a lot of these people, they actually wanted to believe me. You could see it in them. But they just wouldn't stick their neck out and say, hey, we think this guy might be right.
And why do you think they didn't do that?
Because the system is so, I don't know how many, and it might have changed a little bit now, but I doubt it, from what you hear. How many men actually get custody of their children in family court? Not a lot. Why not? Are they not good, are they not as good a parent as the mother? As, we're in a pretty liberal age, if you can do it, I can do it too. Well, the system's stacked against the man. You can't win. And when you do win, then that's sort of, they stack it against you again and change the goalpost, get another, independent children's psychologist that's going to take their point of view, be swayed in their direction. It's a no-win situation. And you've got to remember, in this family law court system, there's no accountability. You can't say, I'm going to appeal that and go to the next court down the road. They're a one-stop shop.
Harley, are you taking legal action now, or are you looking for compensation? What is driving you right now?
Well, nothing's really driving me. I just decided it was time to speak out. I'd like to speak to the Attorney General. I think he's the man that deals with things like this, and just see what is, look, man, it's destroyed my life. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, I held down quite a big job for a lot of years, and, I couldn't cope with that. I, started getting bouts of depression, and, and you work your way through it, but you don't cop the same pressure that after these things that you once upon a time put up with. Like, so all of a sudden I didn't work for 2 years. I struggled on at work for a year or so after the event. And then I didn't go to work for 2 years. I did odd jobs and this, that and the other and kept myself busy, but I couldn't cope. I was fighting with depression. I was fighting with all these things. And I just needed to get myself right. And then you go back to work and, obviously I work and I do a lot of things, but I don't cop pressure like I used to. I can't hold down the jobs I used to hold down. I had 3 courts going: family law court, magistrates court and Supreme Court. I sold all my assets, to fund court battles, which, and you do that for your kids every time. You do everything, you give everything for your kids. But, that's what it cost me, and I haven't got my kids. Someone's got to be accountable. It's their court.
And that's the question we're asking today, Harley. Our heart aches for you and what you've been through. This is a very difficult story to share and something that you've not spoken publicly about for 8 years, and we do appreciate you talking to us on ABC Radio. We thank you so much for talking to us today.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, Nadia.
Okay, so that's that. I hope this has brought some light onto the family court issues, showing a real-world example of the impact of divorce, family breakdown on society. Of course, it is a blight, and it is a problem, a serious problem that perhaps you underestimate. I wonder if there are enough interventions. And it makes me think as well about no-fault divorce. There are laws in many countries who've changed to allow for no-fault divorce, which for some people is needed. But I imagine that many couples at the same time would benefit from some encouragement from a judge or someone else to stand between them and say, what are the issues that you have? What is going on? Can you work through this? Can we consider the children in this matter? Can there be reconciliation? Can there be a reunion of hearts that have become troubled? Or a heart that has become wayward for another person who's not in the marriage relationship? These are all questions that I think are very important, questions that we need to ask, and things that we need to talk about. And I hope that in this discussion, we can pierce through the bias or shift through the temptation that it seems to be to vilify, in this case I would say males, and consider the importance of family. Consider the importance of stable and functional families, of happy husbands and wives, and through that, happy children. And when that breaks down, how can we do a better job of intervening? Of coming in between the two to say, stop, enough is enough. Don't take this any further. These are all questions to have, and I hope that we can discuss them here and in your wider networks. I hope you enjoyed the story from Harley Cuzens, because I think it's one that is really shook me when I first heard it. I was driving down the road and to wherever I was going, and I was just glued. My ears were glued to that radio program. Pardon me for that. So I hope you enjoyed it. Once again, let's have a discussion. And I want to reassert and reaffirm that the wealth of nations is dependent on the wealth of the family. That's it for me. Have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.